Good evening, and welcome to the Orange Water and Sewer Authority Board of Directors work session this Thursday, January 9th, 2020. We are experiencing technical difficulties, and the public Wi-Fi system is unreliable tonight. We apologize for the inconvenience. On behalf of the board and staff, we express our deepest sympathies to Bruce Runberg and his family on the passing of his wife, Cynthia, on December 16th, 2019. A celebration of life will be held for Cynthia tomorrow at 5 p.m. at the UNC Botanical Garden in the Reeves Auditorium located at 100 Old Mason Farm Road in Chapel Hill, and all are welcome to attend. Does any board member know of a conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest with respect to any item on the agenda tonight? On Monday, January 6th, an OWASA orientation was held for newly elected Chapel Hill Town Council members Ty Hoon and Amy Ryan. Ruchir Vora, Bruce Boehm, John Morris, Bruce Runberg, Ed Kerwin, and I participated. The discussion included an overview of OWASA's governance, operations, and key OWASA initiatives. It was a very productive discussion. Would any of the other board members care to add anything about that? On Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020, an OWASA orientation will be held for newly elected Carborough Town Council member Susan Romaine at 9 a.m. in the OWASA boardroom. On Thursday, January 30th, the Board of Directors will hold a special meeting to discuss the long-range water supply plan at 6 p.m. in OWASA's community room. And on Wednesday, February 12th, the Board of Directors will hold a diversity and inclusion session with Visions Incorporated beginning at 5:30 p.m. in the OWASA boardroom. Any other announcements by board members? Announcements by staff. Mary Tiger has an announcement.
Hi, good evening. Mary Tiger, Sustainability Manager. The Orange County Climate Council met on December 17th, 2019. And a couple of the topics that they covered, we worked on a draft mission statement. So I'll read that to you all now. The Orange County Climate Council accelerates joint action addressing the climate emergency by sharing successful strategies and identifying opportunities to equitably reduce greenhouse gas emissions and protect all county residents. So still draft, but that's an idea of where the group is heading. And the council also started to set up some committees. So we're getting to action. And the 4 committees that I have in my notes, these are not in the official minutes, but in my notes, the Identity and Standards Committee, which is a group that's going to evaluate a community goal, such as a lead community. The Climate Action Database to help identify the work underway by all the entities in the county and to help identify opportunities to collaborate and gaps. A Climate Justice Outreach Committee and a Monitoring and Evaluation Committee. So those committees are still evolving and their membership is growing, but that's where we're headed. There's no meeting scheduled yet for the next meeting of the Orange County Climate Council.
Thank you, Mary. Any other staff announcements? Are there any additional comments, suggestions, and information items from board members? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. There are 5 items on the consent agenda, 1 information and report, and 4 action. And they are: number 1, quarterly report on attendance at board and committee meetings. Number 2, resolution awarding audit contract to Martin Starnes and Associates CPAs, PA, and authorizing chair of the board of directors and the finance officer to execute said contract. Number 3, minutes of the November 14th, 2019 meeting of the board of directors. Number 4, minutes of the December 11th, 2019 special meeting of the board of directors. Number 5, minutes of the December 12th, 2019 meeting of the board of directors. Are there any public comments on the consent agenda? Are there any questions, comments, or is there an item a board member would like to pull from the consent agenda?
I just had a quick question
Ruchir
on the second one. Yeah, the second one, just for the, I just wanted to know what the schedule was in terms of when the audit contracts, when next would OWASA be reviewing proposals for audit contracts? It wasn't clear if what the time frame was.
Stephen Winters, Director of Finance and Customer Service. It'll be next year this time.
Okay, all right. Is that, because it wasn't in the, well, actually, I didn't see anything, and usually there's like after the 12-month calendar, there's usually like, or at least I thought there used to be like a table of like longer-term timeframes. So maybe that should be included in future agenda items.
I don't know if it is or not, but we'll check. I think you're right. It should be.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Stephen, does OWASA have to do audits?
No,
So they have to hire one auditor for that?
correct. We do not. That's the case for organizations that don't have the expertise to be able to understand everything that goes in that. And so they have one firm to prepare that and then another one to audit it. We're deemed to be, I started to say something smart aleck and I stopped myself. Now I can't come up with it. But that's not the case for us. We're okay.
Bruce Ball?
Hey, Stephen,
Stephen?
come on back. So how long have we had Martin Starnes as our auditor?
This under this contract, it'll be the third years, but they've done it, I think that was in the memo. I can't remember for sure, either 7 or 8
Okay.
years.
So I know in public companies, there's a sort of rule of thumb that after 5 years, I think maximum, the lead auditor changes. The firm doesn't necessarily. Do we have that policy also?
That does not, those PCAOB rules don't apply to us, but I think the firm has rules where they do that. So we have had different partners in charge over the years.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board on the consent agenda? Then may I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Yinka Iankoya, second by Ruchir Vora. All in favor of those, favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. Okay, it passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to the regular agenda. First, update on employee health and dental insurance for the next fiscal year. Stephanie Glasgow and Ellen Tucker. Yeah.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's this time every year that we provide an update to the board on our employee health and dental insurance plans. We do this well before our contract expires on June 30th of each year. So up on the screen, as well as included in your agenda packet, is our timeline of events, starting with today's meeting, and it will conclude with the new contract year. I do want to point out to you that your next update is scheduled for April the 9th. And as usual, we have Ellen Tucker with Gallagher here. She's going to provide an update on the financial performance of the health plan, an overview of our claims, as well as any considerations we need to consider for the renewal. So I'll be sitting right over there, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. But with that, I introduce Ellen Tucker.
Good evening. This will be really brief because we don't have the renewal yet, but we do like to give you guys an overview. So we'll talk a little bit about financial performance, how we're running this year, and we'll talk a little bit at a very high level about large claimants. We don't go into much detail just for confidentiality reasons, and then some additional renewal considerations. So this is how we're running. What this is looking at is the percentage of premium that is used to pay claims. Blue Cross would like that to be at 77.5%. Actually, that's probably our target. They'd probably like it to be lower than that, but about 77, 78% of the premium should go to pay claims, and then the rest of it is for them to pay their folks, administer our plan, and make a profit. So if you look at the first year, we track this every year, we run it at 87, so we were running higher. And these are net claims. These do not include large claimants. That year, we actually ran at about 126%. So for every dollar we gave them, they spent $1.26. So they didn't make any money that year for sure. So it had been running high for a few years, and then it dropped. And so we've had 3 really good years in a row. That has resulted in some really good rate action. So we had the -18 for this year. We had actually we're at 24.1% below our premiums for 2016. So that's how far our rates have come down over time. So we are running well. We would expect a really good renewal. I'll give you one caveat on that in a minute, but it is running well. The thing I would point out, that last bar that you see, the 48.8, that is the current underwriting period. There are 2 months left, so they will add 2 months to that. And then they will start to work on our renewal. So that's what's left. We did get the -18 effective July 1. Note that in that column, only 3 months reflect the lower premium. So even though it looks like we're running really, really well, they also know the premiums are going to continue to go down 18%. So there'll be 2 more months of that in this underwriting period, and then that will continue for the rest of the year. So the rates are still going down. The claims may not go down or may go up. We'll see what happens. But that's where we are right now. So that's good news. That's better news than what most people are looking at regarding how their plan's running. So these are our large claimants. As I said, we used to have higher cost. And if you look at those first 2 years, you'll see that we had 9 people that were at least at half of what they call the pooling level. So at 50,000 or more. Both of those first 2 years, we ran over $1 million of folks in those categories. We had 5 the first year and then 3 the next year. When we get down to that third time period, we had 6 at 324,000. Then we had 4 at 233,000. They had lowered our pooling level to 75,000, so half of that. And then in this most recent, we had 4 again. However, we had 1 person that's about $200,000. And so that's the caveat I would give you, is we're watching to see what happens with that claimant. So if that claimant continues to run high claims, even though that is not included in our other calculation, it still can affect the renewal because the carrier can adjust for the high claimant. So that's the one caveat we have right now. We do know it's an ongoing claimant and there will be additional claims. So that's the one we're watching. So we started at a 5.8% decrease. It's unusual for a carrier to actually start at a decrease. Usually if it's really good, they still start at 0, but they actually came out at a decrease. We had some conversations ahead of time and they were willing to come out at that level. We got it down to 18%. That's a lot of movement. That was, let me see how much it was. Sorry. So that was $236,000 of savings that we negotiated from the -5.8 to the -18. Employee contributions stayed at 0. We did share the decrease with the employees who pay part of the premium for other tiers of coverage. Blue Cross has a trend right now of about 7% in this area. So if you were running perfectly, you would get a 7% increase plus a little bit of extra trend. It's a longer period of time than 12 months. So let's say about 9-10%. So we know that we're running better. We would hope to have another good renewal this year. So we'll see where they start out. We'll have that in the middle of March, and then we'll do our analysis, which we will share with you. For those of you who haven't seen it, you'll see lots of numbers. And we'll walk through kind of what we feel about that, what we think we should try to get on the renewal negotiation. So we are 77.5% credible. What does that mean? It means that we're not large enough to have our claims be 100% of our renewal negotiation. So back when we had the bad years, that helped us. It softened the renewals. When we have the really good years, we don't get quite as much off because we are being blended in with some other groups. And right now we're running better than those other groups. We are below benchmark on both our medical claims and pharmacy claims. Most employers are struggling with pharmacy costs right now. That's what tends to be the trend issue this year is pharmacy. We've not seen that here at OWASA. I feel like I should knock on wood. And we have lots of preventive health visits. We have done a great year every year in getting folks to go get their preventive care. And, in doing the enrollment meetings, because we do them in person with the employees here, they are always very willing to do the things we ask to keep the plan rich and to keep the payroll deductions low and keep the cost to OWASA low. So we feel like they've been really good partners and should be applauded for the way that they've used the plan. As I said, we have a large claimant this year. That's not anything anyone can control. And, that's part of why we have insurance, because we need that kind of coverage. So, again, we will have the renewal about the middle of March, and then we'll get started on that analysis. We'll share it with Stephanie as soon as we get it and let her know where we're starting. And then we'll start doing our analysis, and then we'll be back presenting that to you guys. Any questions?
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Any questions, comments from the board? I guess not, Ellen.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephanie. So the next item on the agenda is the Diversity and Inclusion Program update by Stephanie Glasgow.
Hi. I'm excited to provide you an update tonight on our recent diversity and inclusion work. The last update that you received was in September, and it included our EEO annual report. Tonight, I'm going to address items from September through December of 2019. So during the update in September, board member Bruce Boehm had made suggestions that we send recruitment advertisements to several places, such as minority-owned businesses, organizations that offer English as a second language, libraries, food banks, primary and secondary schools, et cetera, et cetera. And as a result of that recommendation, we did a lot of hard work, and we're now sending out almost 100 more advertisements than we were before that September meeting. So thank you very much. Visions Incorporated, as you all know, was here in October to provide new board members the training that they provided previous board members. And the next training session, as was mentioned earlier, is going to be in mid-February. And we appreciate those 3 board members that had been trained to incorporate themselves with the new board member training. So a lot of great feedback on that. Our diversity recruitment group finalized, if you remember, Kelly Belcher and Kelly Satterfield were here in front of the board and talked about combining 5 administrative guides into one, and that has been done and it's signed off on. And now that recruitment group is currently working on how to do some training for our crew leaders and supervisors and managers and things on all of that, recruitment, retention, making hiring decisions, et cetera. The Diversity Resource Group has been working very hard to promote all of the diversity work and all of our goals. They're currently working on improving our mentoring program, and they've implemented ideas for joint activities. Things like they had a cultural bake-off at the Employee Appreciation Day, and most recently, in the period that I talked about in December at our holiday party, they did this randomized seating, so people weren't sticking with their cliques and departments and things, and it worked out really well, and we got a lot of great feedback. At first, they weren't sure, but everybody kind of got into it, so it was really good. So they've done a good job on that. We had 8 volunteer members from the Diversity Leadership, Diversity Recruitment, and Diversity Resource Group that were trained by Visions on some train the trainer sessions. So how do we now carry this program ourselves? And when we have new employees come in, how do we get them on board with what our efforts are and our goals? And so these 8 individuals have been trained, and they're going to start doing that training internally for when we have new employees and things. And they're also going to do some training on implicit bias and microaggressions. So it's sort of a 2-part focus for them. So we're really excited about that. Another item was my participation in a focus group. A team of researchers at UNC received a $2 million grant, and they're conducting a study through NC Works, Department of Social Services, and the university. And the goals are to come up with a program to reduce stress, prevent chronic diseases, and create a supportive environment for people who are receiving Department of Social Services services in the workplace, how to get people ready to interview for jobs and carry them all the way through to employment and beyond, and be in touch with them for about a year or so after employment. And once this program is established in Orange County, the goal is to then roll it out to several other parts of the state. So it's really good grant, and they're really excited about it. So are you familiar with it? Good. And so basically, that's all the information I have for you tonight for this snapshot from September through December. And your next update will be in May of 2020. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Are there any member of the public who wish to comment? Any questions, comments from board members?
Thanks for continuing the progress.
We sure will. That's our plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the sewer use ordinance update. Todd Taylor.
Thank you. As you recall, back in October, the staff had looked at our sewer use ordinance and recommended some changes be made. And that, as you remember, there's a process involved in that where we have to open that up for comments from our various community stakeholders, including the county, the towns, and UNC. And we've completed that process, and we did get a few comments back, and they're on page 8.3 in your packet is the list of comments we received and also our response to those comments. The comments were more regarding procedures than anything else, not so much about the ordinance language itself. And they also, several of the comments were regarding just questioning whether existing entities would be grandfathered in. And of course, we agree with that. So these comments don't really impact the language that you first saw back in October. So the ordinance that's included in tonight's packet is the exact same language from October. Rashir provided a few comments earlier today. There was one comment in there that would change the language, and staff is comfortable with making that change if the board pleases, if that pleases the board. And we would recommend, there's a draft resolution provided in your packet, and we would recommend to the board that barring any major other changes to the language, that you could, if you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and adopt that resolution tonight. We've also got a placeholder on the next board meeting agenda, just in case there were any other additional changes, that we could do it at that time as well. But I'm here to answer any questions you might have on the comments that we received, and any more revisions that the board may suggest to the sewer use ordinance.
So are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Are there any comments, questions from the board? Bob?
I would just ask, I didn't see Rushir's email this afternoon. So
Okay.
could you just summarize what his
Sure.
suggestion was?
Rashir provided three, let me find it here, three comments to us, and one was just his thoughts about a survey that he saw that Durham County was using in their biosafety laboratories, and we agree that that's a great resource, and that we would, try to utilize that when making our own survey. The second comment he had was actually a comment on our response to the comments that we received regarding the grandfathering of various, existing facilities that are out there and things like that. And Rashir had suggested that there were some, some controls that need to be installed and things like that to address some of the, concerns that may be around grandfathering some of that. And then the final comment that Rashir had provided was regarding some language. I think he had commented on this previously when we presented the ordinance the first time, regarding manufacturing process, that if a if an entity is changing their manufacturing process or processes inside there, that they have an obligation to notify us when they make those changes. And Rushir had suggested that we look to another area in the ordinance that has a little bit more detail about what constitutes a change to a process. So we're fine with that suggestion, and I think we can incorporate that into the final revision if that's the only change we have to the language as it's presented now.
Thank you.
Bruce Bowen.
A question. Throughout the document, you refer to the administrator and then OWASA. And I couldn't understand from the context what the logic is between those two. Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's probably just a poor job of catching every one of those. The administrator is, the person, and of course OWASA is the organization. And I'd say it should be administrator in most cases because it's typically, a person that has to make the decision on, whether an interpretation of the ordinance and how that's applied. When it says OWASA, I thought we did a pretty good job of capturing all that, but when it refers to OWASA, it's probably more OWASA policy driven than it is that particular administrator trying to make a judgment call.
Okay. I don't know if the document needs to elucidate that some, but I didn't understand it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? So it's the pleasure of the board to go ahead and proceed tonight or wait for another.
We're fine either way, but honestly, there's no more to the process that would change this ordinance. Of course, we could bring it back, address Rushir's comment, and maybe look at some of Bruce's thoughts. But I think we could go ahead and actually just put those into the ordinance before we do the final version, if the board's comfortable with that.
Oh, I had one other question. Did we, this is kind of not, it's related to the ordinance, but do we have the idea of what the municipalities are, how are they going to actually refer to this ordinance? Because I mean, basically, if there's an entity that comes in and they're say, okay, I'm moving my operation or starting an operation with whatever, some sort of has waste, some sort of manufacturing process to Chapel Hill, they're going to look in the Chapel Hill town ordinances. How are they going to know to look at OWASA? I mean, they would never think that.
Well, if it's a change of use in a facility or something like that, that's typically going to require building permits. And that's going to go through the town of Chapel Hill's building permit process. And if it requires any plumbing changes, which would impact the sewer, then it will facilitate, that would be facilitated through the town of Chapel Hill. It's the same way now, if there's a building going to be built, they need a building permit, they have to go through Chapel Hill. Part of that review process is the OWASA is included in that, and it has to be reviewed by our folks. So that's kind of how that works. The difficult one is UNC, but we have a good relationship with them because they don't go through the town's building permit process. They have to go through the state. But we have a good relationship with them. They know what our requirements are, and we work with them very closely all the time on their facilities.
Okay. Well, what I'm thinking about is, especially with what I understand is going to be built in Chapel Hill, are facilities where there's, like a landlord with maybe 20 different small labs inside them. And those small labs don't get an OWASA invoice. They don't get any permits, building permits. They're just there, and they might be discharging something, and they won't know to look at. It'd be like a master multi, whatever the MFMMM, whatever thing is. So I think we're going to come across that same issue, but it'll be, potentially much more dangerous side effect. So I feel like we need a solution for that. That I'm not sure if we're gathering, if we're just basing this on building permits.
Yeah, I don't know in that situation. I mean, we have no direct contact with that user, so I'd be challenged to figure out how to, we would have to work through the landlord. They would have to be monitoring what that is doing. And then if it does impact our sewer adversely, then we're going to trace it to find out what it is, and they would be subject to, but it would be through the landlord. The landlord would be the one in violation because they're the property owner. So those are difficult situations to manage just from a relationship standpoint because we're one step removed from the end user. The ordinance applies universally to anyone. It's just what's our knowledge of it? And, it's kind of like if somebody's doing something out here illegal, well, the police may not know about it until they catch them doing it. It's
Yeah.
a similar type situation.
Yeah, the only difficulty is that even if it's a conscientious, company, they might not have any idea of where to go. I don't have a solution on this, but I feel like that's a potential gap that we should try to somehow come up with a solution for, either, talking with the towns, having them come up with an ordinance that says basically our sewer use ordinance is the OWASA sewer use ordinance, something like that. Because otherwise, I already know that there's companies that don't know, like that they have no way of knowing, and there's no way for them to know. So I think this is a gap that needs to be addressed. And I kind of mentioned this probably 4 years ago, but I feel like we still haven't really come up with a good solution for this.
It is difficult. I think it's just by OWASA's nature as an independent utility that we're going to have challenges such as this, is that we're not integrated into, when somebody goes to look for things in Chapel Hill, they go to the town of Chapel Hill. They're not necessarily thinking of OWASA, but we rely on the folks there to point them in the right direction. We also rely on, the engineers and architects and things that work in this area. They know, after they've gone through the process a time or two, they know exactly who they need to be talking to. So you've got to rely on those relationships. I agree. I don't know how we address it though, other than, we have a pretty good presence here and work closely with our partners.
Would it make sense to have ask the towns or county to create an ordinance that basically says our sewer use ordinance is the OWASA sewer use ordinance? Can we do that?
Yeah, I don't know if asking them for the ordinance, but I do think having that conversation, maybe kicking it up a level to the planning director, fire chief, town manager, and building inspector, because, if there's something going on in that lab that may impact quality of our wastewater, it may impact the health of the people in the building, people that work there, and that, there may be others that want to know, so.
We can definitely have
I think
the
we could go
conversation.
forward with the sewer use ordinance, but I also think it's a good action item for staff to have to follow up on this issue to see how it best be addressed, working, with our town partners and perhaps others.
Okay.
Because, I'm like Todd, I don't see the thing we could do to make it happen in our ordinance, but I agree that could be an issue, and to be proactive with our town partners on that. There's certainly no downside to that.
Right.
What do you think about that
I'd say we
approach?
can reach out and see what happens. I don't think we have the authority to make them adopt
Yeah,
it.
I don't think
So-
we're the, yeah, I understand that, but I do think that they might not see it as they might be blind to that being as a potential pitfall. And without disclosing any conflicts of interest, I can think this is something that should be addressed.
Any other questions or comments by the board?
There is a typo in the third whereas in the second line. It's my mistake. I think I made that change for you. And that word should read to amend its existing sewer use ordinance, not its exiting sewer use ordinance.
So I guess we're ready to vote, but we've discussed some changes that haven't been incorporated in the document as yet. I'm not sure. I have a copy of Ruchir's email that has the specific languages he's recommending, and I can read that into the motion, but we don't have any specific language with regard to Bruce Bowen's comment. Would it be best for you to go ahead and revise it and then bring it back and put it in the consent agenda at some?
I'm fine either way, whatever the board's comfortable with.
Yeah, I think that's fine, Todd, unless you can summarize with some specificity the
Well,
changes you would make.
I think,
So the motion would be,
right.
as our.
If you could read the amended
Yeah,
motion with.
Section 5.2B11, Rushier has suggested that any change in manufacturing or pretreatment process that affects the user's wastewater discharge as described in section 6.5. I think that pretty much sums up that one. If I could, I think on Bruce's, I would say it's just to define the administrator role versus a OWASA role. So the definition of the administrator is the individual at OWASA who is assigned to make interpretations of the ordinance, and OWASA, when it's referred to in the ordinance, is based on policies and practices of the organization. Does that seem to capture all of it? Now, Bob, work the magic.
Well, I think you got it. The administrator is the person responsible for the administration of the ordinance. And the OWASA is the organization itself. And I think it's easy enough to say that in parens after the first use of those words in the main body of the document. Easy enough.
And as far as a motion, Bob, then the motion would
The
be
motion would be to adopt the
this resolution correcting the typo and the two specific items that Todd just described to the board.
And the motion is on page 8.5. It's in your packet.
Well, yeah, that's actually the resolution, not a motion to approve the resolution.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you, Bob. Motion made by Bob Morgan, seconded by Ruchir Vora. Any further discussion before we take a vote? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes
Thank you.
unanimously. Thank you, Todd.
And Todd, before you sit down, just so we're clear, the action item now for the pending key staff action items, will you summarize what you understand, what
Sure.
our next steps would be on that? Just so we're all on the same page.
If I understand it correctly, what Rushier is suggesting is that we reach out to the various permitting agencies and discuss with them better ways to emphasize that OWASA is the purveyor of water and sewer in the Chapel Hill Carborough service area.
And that any discharges that, any new discharges that might be permitted either by the towns or by the county, the owners of those discharges should be advised that they are subject to required compliance with the OWASA.
Mhm.
I think that's a really crucial part. It's not really enough to have somebody in the building inspector's office say, have you talked to OWASA? Somebody in the building inspector's office ought to be saying, the OWASA sewer discharge ordinance applies to your business, your premises, anything that goes down your toilet or sink. And, it wouldn't be bad to make some sort of a little legend to provide the building inspection officers and the managers of the town and the county in order to get their cooperation to remind new businesses off that rule.
Bob Morgan?
Just as another idea, the state took away the right of local governments to issue building license. And when that happened, municipalities stopped doing that type of activity. And because of that, there was no trigger for code enforcement, zoning enforcement, and review by OWASA. I don't know if it's legal or not, but it seems to me that you could require businesses to register in order to make that trigger. You might want to have a discussion about some process the towns and the county, well, the towns for us, to trigger that, because it's also helpful for the municipality to have a list of all the businesses in town. So it's of value to the towns as well as to, so just an idea.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Affordability Outreach Program update. Mary Tiger.
Good evening again. So in your all's packets, you have the proposed plan for the coming year and an update on the past year. So I'm just going to hit on some of the highlights real fast in 10 minutes. So OWASA's affordability program was officially launched a little over 4 years ago as a strategic initiative by the board to programmatically address the affordability of our services through water conservation and through partnership with agencies that are working with every day with our low-income customers. And this is a really important program for a few reasons. One is, through this partnership with the agencies in our community, we're able to work with low-income customers before they have a problem paying for their water and sewer bill. So we're able to kind of proactively work with them on the affordability of our services. We're able to work with those partners to achieve larger goals about affordability in our community. And also in promoting water conservation and water efficiency, we're advancing strategies for customers to sustainably reduce their water bill over time and help to keep their bills low for months to come, as well as having an environmental impact on our community. So a story that happened earlier in 2019 that really kind of brings together some of the highlights of 2019 to me and some of the initiatives was a home water use assessment that we conducted early in the year. It was triggered by a customer having difficulty paying for a very high bill, which we very quickly identified a leak at her residence. And we could tell pretty well from looking at the water use trends that it was a toilet leak, but we weren't totally sure. This customer didn't have the means kind of physically or financially to address that leak. So we went to the home to help her identify what the leak was. Before doing that, we reached out to the Orange County Department of Aging, which has a volunteer program called Handy Helpers. So it's volunteers in the community that go out and do small home repairs on customer homes. So I visited our customer's home with a handy helper. We did identify a toilet leak in the home on the upstairs. So it was a place where she couldn't even visit. She couldn't get up the stairs. And so he fixed the toilet. You don't want me in the back of the toilet. He fixed the toilet so it wasn't leaking anymore, and actually identified that a lock on her home was broken, and that she had a door that was consistently unlocked, so he was able to fix that as well. And that, as we talk about the program and kind of the larger initiatives that we do to try to reach out to the community, that one story to me stuck out as here we have this technology and this partnership, and it really came together to help reduce this customer's water use and her bill throughout the whole year. But a couple of the other highlights that are outlined in your agenda packet, which goes into details about water wagon events and various tutorials. But I did want to touch on a couple of the major milestones. So as you know, we rolled out the Agua Vista web portal earlier in 2019, and we now have over 35% of our customers registered for that. We did broad scale marketing campaign for Agua Vista, but we also did some focused marketing to low income customers. the picture here on this previous slide is our intern last summer, Keandra Jenkins, and she's at the National Night Out in Chapel Hill Public Housing promoting Agua Vista and OWASA and answering questions about water conservation and water efficiency. We also worked with our partners to help amplify the marketing through their newsletters about Agua Vista and registering for that. We did a tutorial at the Senior Center on how to use Agua Vista, and we demonstrated the portal to the staff of the IFC, who's the primary provider of bill assistance in our community, to show them how Agua Vista works, how it's really important water conservation, water efficiency, leak detection tool, so that they know and they can talk to their clients that they interact with about the value of that. Of course, the leak alerts provided by Agua Vista go out to everyone, and we've sent out over 8,000 leak alerts in 2019. Along with this increased leak alert is an increased demand for leak repair. As I mentioned, the customer before, lower income elderly woman who needed assistance with that leak repair. We developed a resource guide that's attached in your agenda packet that was a request of one of our partners, Rebuilding Together, to provide some information about how, when customers get this leak alert, where they can go, what should they do, and ultimately, if they don't have the means to repair that leak, who they can call in the community. So that resource guide goes out. It's attached with all of the leak notifications. And we are getting reports that our partners, particularly those in the Home Preservation Coalition, are getting increased requests for leak repair. The Mayor's Save Water Challenge was a big community-wide partnership to promote water conservation to the whole community. I mentioned the Home Preservation Coalition, so we've been very engaged with that group over the past year. We joined as a community liaison partner, so we attend those meetings. It's a very active group where we discuss issues of common interest, and then that group shares the cases, so the homes that they're working on, because there's typically quite a lot of overlap, and where there are water issues, sewer issues, we can kind of help and contribute to that conversation. So that's been a really meaningful engagement for OWASA over the last year. And then, of course, Care to Share Day. So it's our first annual Care to Share Day to raise awareness about Care to Share, which is our customer bill assistance program. So these are the trends of the past 3 years of Care to Share contributions. So it's the monthly trends. That light gray line is 2017. 2018 monthly contributions, on-bill contributions increased as a result of two things. One, we sent a letter to all donors thanking them for their contribution and requesting that they consider moving from roundup to the nearest dollar to a fixed contribution. And that tick up later in the year shows why this is really important, because that tick up later in 2018 and again in 2019 comes as a result of our change in rates. And so that difference between the most commonly received bill, the difference between that and the nearest dollar, it just so happened in 2018 and 2019, that differential was increased. And so our roundup customers were contributing more. Important to note that in the next rate change, that could just as easily go down. So we think that it's important to continue to promote Care to Share as a fixed contribution so that it doesn't have that type of volatility in the future. Yeah. Oh, it's from the fixed bill contributions. That's typically occurring earlier in the year. So you see that tick up in March 2018. That was a result of the letter that we sent. We can attribute that to the result of the letter that we sent. And then there's a tick up in the green bar in 2019, and we sent the letter earlier in the year in 2019. So we saw a small increase in. The big jumps that you see in between September and October are happening, they correspond with the rate increase. or the rate change. It wouldn't matter if it went up or down. It's that differential that really matters there. See if there was anything else I wanted to say about that. I'll say that the direct contributions, so that there's an opportunity for customers to contribute directly to the IFC and earmark those funds for Care to Share. And the IFC received over $1,400 in direct contributions, and all of those came in November, December of 2019. And so the Care to Share Day efforts resulted in that increase. So as we look ahead to 2020 and what staff proposes to be the focus of the Affordability Outreach Program, I mean, certainly the kind of continued partnership and continuing many of the efforts that we've already established. But one new thing we'd like to focus on is rechartering the Care to Share program. So the original agreement for Care to Share dates back to 1997. It's between OWASA and the IFC. And it talks about Taste of Hope. And I've not been able to identify, we don't have any other sort of charter for Care to Share, how the funds are to be used, what's the financial policy, what are the goals for Care to Share. And so it's really time to to revisit that charter for Care to Share, formalize more of the expectations of OWASA and of IFC and what that funding pool does. And I emailed with Ray earlier today about why this is an issue now is the years that I've been here, before this year, when the IFC has sent us an invoice for the bill assistance that they've provided, we haven't been able to pay the entire bill. We've said, this is the funds we've collected, we can give you that. So there wasn't really any need for, well, what do we do if we have excess funds, or what's really the goal? Because the goal at that point would have been, well, we just want to reimburse the IFC for everything they're invoicing us for. In the past year, with these increases that we've seen, we actually are able to pay the IFC for all of the invoices that they are submitting to us. I can't say with confidence that this means that we're meeting the needs of the community. I don't know that to be the case, because you could imagine there might be a chilling effect from us not being able to pay the bill for so long. So this rechartering of Care to Share would be to really sit down with the IFC, talk about the funds that we're raising now and what some of the expectations around that are. Should we set some sort of fund balance that we maintain so that the IFC can know with confidence when they send us an invoice that they'll get reimbursed for the money that they've already given out? And then added on to that, if there are excess funds, can we use them to address that kind of next tier of affordability? Can we use it to provide our partners in the Home Preservation Coalition assistance to do the leak repair, to upgrade the mauve and teal toilets that are out there that are using a lot of water, so that kind of can address that next layer of affordability around our services. So I don't have the answers to those questions to you right now, but what I am asking for is your kind of authorization and blessing for us to move forward with developing that, and then we would bring that back to the board to review, discuss, and approve. We're also proposing to leverage our investment in Agua Vista, and really the brand name for that is WaterSmart, to leverage our investment in that to reach out to customers with home water use reports, and to pilot that effort in lower income neighborhoods. So if you all have received that letter or that email from Duke Energy that says, here's how you're using energy, and here's how it compares to your neighbors, and here's how it compares to really efficient homes, that's actually based on a host of social science research that demonstrates that that's a really effective way to get people to use less energy, and it's a really effective way to get people to use less water. And Agua Vista has the capability to generate that, to generate a custom letter, which we kind of based the letter that we send to our customers that receive bill assistance. we can send that letter to customers, and then we can start to document and track the effectiveness of that. So in the coming year, we'd like to pilot that with about 1,000 households in lower income neighborhoods who would regularly receive a home water use report. We want to continue to struggle and succeed and work on communicating with tenants of master metered multifamily customers. So kind of combining our large scale, communication efforts with our affordability program and start to communicate with them about water conservation, water efficiency, but also who the heck is OWASA and how you can be alerted when we have emergencies. So combining those two efforts. And then of course, continued community partnership. Really tried to get in that 10 minutes. So now open it up for questions, feedback, comments, and hopefully the approval to move forward with the affordability outreach program is proposed.
Let's read the action items on the screen.
There. Okay.
Are there any questions or are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Board member questions and comments. Yinka, Iancoya.
So when I was looking on page 9.13 with the Lift Up Financial Coaching Program, what is the current, I see the current one is about a 2-week deferred payment plan. So if they go through this program, what's the negotiated longer deferment?
It can be up to a year. We don't typically have very large arrears, but we look to the Community Empowerment Fund to work with that customer and come up with the best payment plan that works with their budget. But we have agreed to up to a year.
Okay. And so with that, I was surprised that it was, the reports were saying that no customer had completed their arrangement. So I was trying to figure out how long do they have to pay that no one decided, like no one ever was able to complete the program. This would be on the next page, the program. So
my understanding is that the 4 customers that were referred to the program, some of them did not complete the paperwork to actually formalize what that payment plan would be. And a few customers got bill assistance to pay it off before they really had a chance to get into that payment plan.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bruce Runberg.
Mary, with the various problems that our customers might have relative to leaks, how often is the cause of the problem a faulty meter? Are those generally very accurate? I know electrical meters are, but what about the water meters we use?
Just look back at Todd Taylor, General Manager of Operations, about the effectiveness of our meters. And with our meter upgrade, we actually replaced 2/3 of the meters that are out there. And 1/3 were updated with registers. And when we did testing of our meters before we replaced them, we found that they were surprisingly still quite accurate. And so we believe them to be very accurate. And typically when meters fail, they fail slow, but only a little bit slow.
Bruce Bowen.
So I'm looking at page 9.3 where you talk about 613 customers were cut off, and of those, 152 were cut off multiple times. Do we know the usage of those customers over a long period of time? And the reason I ask it is if the bulk of those customers have quite low usage, that might be a signal that maybe we should look at a lifeline rate below our current lowest rate. Any thoughts on that?
I like it. I like that question. We haven't looked at We haven't done that kind of cross analysis, but I think it's a good one to do. And be happy to pull that into an analysis that we'll do in the affordability outreach program this year.
Any other questions? John Morris?
I'm really impressed by this report. It's really well written. It has a lot of very useful statistical information and analysis in it. So, and thinking back a couple of years ago, I think this program is really coming together. I'm very impressed to read about how now the billing office is more active in calling people when their bills are about to be overdue. I think that's a terrific thing to do because getting hit with the cutoff and then the $45 charge plus your bill arrears, that's a pretty heavy hit if you're on a very low income. So that's terrific, that we're really trying to remind people. And also the new payment options where people can pay online, can pay over the phone with, whatever technology they're using to pay bills with. And then sending letters to people who get assistance with bills, reminding them about water conservation. So that's really great. I think that's just more, smarter thinking in the office. But then the new radio meters, it seems like that's really helping us to notify people very promptly when they have a leak. So that prevents them from generating a huge bill. So that's terrific. I'm just thinking about moving ahead. You've got a lot of good ideas, but it seems to me the place to start is to focus on our customers who have either requested and gotten bill assistance or who have been warned about, almost being cut off, because of almost late payment, or maybe people have been notified about leaks. So those are people who are our customers, and we have some warning signs there. So it'd be really terrific if we could find more ways to connect them with these other agencies who can go into their homes and help them install water conservation devices. I'm not sure what kind of devices you can give out to people like at street fairs and all that, but what can you give to people?
We provide low flow shower heads, faucet aerators. What I found to be very exciting and really effective in my household is a shower timer, which is just a little sand timer that times for 5 minutes. And then we pass out leak detection tablets. So even though we can notify about a leak, being able to identify what toilet it is occurring in, we pass those out as well. And we typically take those to all Water Wagon events. We have them in the office and make them available.
Well, that's really great. I guess we'd have to have a social science research project to see how many people actually install those things.
We would.
But if you could take the leap to getting one of these community partner agencies to actually request people to let them come in and actually put those in, that would be a huge step ahead. And maybe help people replace toilets, for example, with more water conservation fixtures, which would probably is the number one first thing to do. So I think we're on the right track, and if we have some extra revenue coming in that from Care to Share that doesn't have to go to help people pay bills, that could help pay for some of those costs. And then maybe we can just strengthen our network and hopefully get some of these other community volunteer agencies to focus on this water conservation issue, because, that's a continuing cost. And if you can find a way to help people who are really pressed for funds to correct some of those problems, that's a permanent benefit. So anyway, that's very impressive. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Any other questions, comment? I just want to add to what John was saying. We came on the board at the same time, and the receipts from the Care to Share program have increased significantly during that time, and that's a real feel good for me. I congratulate you and all that have contributed to that. Really feel good to hear that all the receipts that the IFC has submitted have been reimbursed by the Care to Share program. That's really amazing. It's been a huge benefit to the community. Looking forward to the next level and see what else we can do. I agree with John. It's a good thing. So there's a proposed motion, if we're ready to go there, on page 9.1 of the agenda packet. The proposed motion is the Board of Directors approves the proposed affordability outreach program update and plan year 5 and authorizes staff to proceed to implement the program in accordance with the approach described in the proposed plan. So is there a motion and a second?
I'll make the motion.
Bruce Bowen makes the motion, second. Jody Ime, second. Any further discussion before we vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
And so the next item on the agenda is to review the board work schedule. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? So Ed, you want to take it from there, please?
Yes, sir. On agenda page 10.2, 10.3 is the draft agenda for your next meeting, Thursday, January 23rd, 7 p.m. at Chapel Hill Town Hall. And the featured item that night will be the fiscal year 2021 budget calendar, planning assumptions, and our work on a new budget format. And then you have 3 reoccurring reports also on the agenda: annual lakes, a 6-month capital improvement program, and 6-month financial report. Following that meeting, you'll have a work session on Thursday, February 13th, 6 p.m. here in the OWASA Community Room. And the key item for that meeting and that work session will be, you'll be hearing from our 3 largest department managers, water, wastewater, and distribution and collections. And they'll be giving you a preview of some of their needs and expectations for next year's fiscal budget. So it'll be, I think we'll might even consider configuring the room a little differently so we can close out the room, bring up the managers, and just roll up our sleeves and have a bit of a detailed discussion about their needs, their expectations, the information that supports what they might be requesting, and then getting some early feedback in the budget process from you all about your reaction to that or any additional information or suggestions. So really, and this will be the first time we've done that at that level with our frontline managers. So we really look forward to that opportunity there at your February 13th meeting. We'll have 2 key action items. First, staff will reach out to the town's permitting agencies to seek their cooperation to notify businesses that any new or existing discharges to the OWASA wastewater system must be in full compliance with the OWASA's sewer use ordinance. And as you just approved, we'll implement year 5 of the affordability outreach program, considering board members' suggestions at tonight's meeting.
Okay. That concludes all the items on the agenda. The meeting is adjourned.
Yeah. Woohoo. Yeah. Sometimes it's an action.
Yes, sir. You are.
Yeah, most of these meetings normally are about an hour and a half.